This is Blind Like Me.
Hello, everyone.
Interviews, information, and reviews related to living with a vision disability. Your host is Tim Black. Tim has been visually impaired since birth. He's been in radio for 30 years and also hosts the podcast Inside Today's Country. Tim has never let his lack of vision stand in his way.
Well, welcome to another edition of Blind Like Me. My name is Tim Black, and of course, you can always find us wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. We thank you very much for listening to us wherever you do find your podcast. This week, we're talking O&M with Colin Marnoch, who is from Vision Loss Rehab Center in Manitoba, under the umbrella of CNIB. Of course, we had a couple of folks on last week talking about some of the virtual learning. Welcome to the podcast, Colin. Thanks for jumping on here with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here.
No problem, my friend. O&M, let's talk about that. It's something that, we are listened to quite heavily in the U.S. We've got a great following here in Canada and, of course, in the U.K. Let's talk about O&M. How have things changed over the last few years? What's new and exciting in the world of O&M as we are going through this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so orientation and mobility is certainly a rapidly evolving sort of training that, through this pandemic and even prior to COVID, there's been so many technology and advancements within the field when it comes to either GPS with a number of different applications such as Blind Square or Lazarillo. Google Maps is making a bigger presence in the United States. I believe it's got some voiceover built into it now that's coming up to Canada soon. But also, we've got different types of technologies available to us within our own environments. I know there's Key to Access, which is a brand new accessible pedestrian technology that's being installed across Canada in certain locations as a test pilot, where that one's you're able to utilize their technology and application to engage street crossings wirelessly, that you're not needing to find buttons and poles. That's a really incredible technology that some municipalities across Canada are certainly taking up, and there's pilot projects going on places so that we're able to sort of learn more about what the technology has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Now, as somebody who teaches this, obviously you're constantly learning and finding the newest ways to make it easier for the visually impaired and blind to get from point A to point B. What's one of your go-to apps and go-to tips?
I think my go-to app is probably likely just Blind Square. I think that's a really reliable application that's being made fairly affordable for folks when you compare it to other sort of independent devices. And then my go-to tip is just, making sure that you sort of check all the boxes. So you ask yourself those basic questions. Where am I? Where am I going? And how am I going to get there? And before you leave, make sure that you put all those pieces to the puzzle as well as you can together, just to sort of have a better idea of that mental map and the route you're about to walk.
Okay. Is there anything new and exciting in the world of walking with a cane? I know I've just upgraded to a larger one, a little bit longer one, but is there new techniques in that now?
The techniques for white cane travel have been pretty traditional and pretty standard over the years. Depending on each individual's strengths and different capacity levels, maybe perhaps different health conditions, you're going to tend to favor one technique over another. Such as, you may observe some people using a touch technique, which is more of the traditional way to do things. And then you have some folks that prefer to stay in contact with the ground. Sort of with regards to what's coming out that's new is there is a lot of development with eye canes and more smart canes that have the ability to provide some sort of GPS or orientation function while you're traveling, as a feature in the cane. And then there are some canes that are offering some obstacle alert. So as you're approaching obstacles, depending on the proximity sensitivity and the sensors and how much you've been able to control that, you can have your cane, certain canes. And, part of the challenge is we don't often get an opportunity to trial these things. So we're asked about them but we perhaps haven't had the opportunity to experience them firsthand. But there is some technology out there that is allowing people to figure out if there is something in front of them by way of vibration.
We are in this pandemic, and as I was talking with the ladies last week about social distancing and so forth, we're doing a lot of virtual learning right now. How's that working for you in the O&M world?
Well, it's certainly been a new challenge. I would say that our job as orientation and mobility instructors heavily rely on us having an opportunity to explore the environment that we're going to teach in, and having an opportunity to work with that individual in person to get to know a lot of different things that could impact their ability to be safe and independent within their communities. So virtual instruction has been a challenge. I think that it has had its absolute pros, though. I've had an opportunity to work with a few different individuals on several different new routes that they're learning. Now, these individuals I've worked with extensively in the past, and I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work in their environments. So I was a little bit more comfortable in the beginning, but they've given me an opportunity as an instructor to learn. And of course, that's been a mutually beneficial relationship, because they've had the opportunity to get out more often through these, unprecedented times where people are being told to stay inside and only go out to exercise. Well, that's essentially what we're doing. We're helping people get out of their homes, feel part of their communities, get to their community mailboxes, perhaps navigate a queuing line at the store, because each store has a different setup and how they want people entering and exiting. And it's sometimes a real challenge to sort of navigate those things.
And that kind of leads me into my next thing is how are we navigating? Because I haven't been in a grocery store for a month and a half because of all of the new rules, and we're just sending my wife in because it's just easier to send one person in than two of us go in. But now we're as a blind and visually impaired community faced with arrows on the ground that are pointing go into one direction, or you can't go down an aisle if there's somebody else in that aisle. So how are we navigating this?
Well, I think stores, companies, stores, businesses have made really good, positive changes to their policies, and have really increased their awareness around folks with disabilities, and not singling out any disability group. They're offering assistance to everyone, at different times of the day. Often those times are a little challenging for people with sight loss, and the blind and partially sighted community to get to, just because it's more challenging to travel at those times of the day due to the amount of light. Perhaps the sun's not up at 6:30 when the store opens.
Right.
But in general, I think that stores have been really embraced the change, and have been providing assistance, very safely and very timely. I've walked through a few stores with people virtually, and the staff there have been really attentive and gone the extra mile. In fact, they're in a few situations, they've even walked the individual out to the bus stop with their bags to make sure they got on safely. So I think, there are certainly challenges with following the different queuing lines, following the arrows on the ground. It's usually painter's tape or something that's not the greatest contrast. So I think that's something businesses can keep in mind, is to use higher contrast markings when and if possible. And then just, continue what they're doing. Offer assistance. If someone needs it, they'll graciously accept it. If they don't need the assistance, then they'll graciously say no, thank you. So I think that they've been doing a great job. And from my experience, I think there's some challenges with grocery delivery just because of the demand on the system at the moment.
Right.
But I think people are finding also different, supports in their families and their friends and their communities. And I think everyone is coming together as, a whole, and making sure that we're all going to get through this together.
Are you seeing, as we, as you are an O&M guy who obviously connects with people, in your area that you take care of, but, across the country, are we finding that our communities are becoming more accessible? I mean, there's been acts that have been passed in different provinces. We have to make sure that we're all, playing on the same field now. Are you finding that the accessibility is becoming better across Canada?
I personally do. Here in Manitoba, we've got the Accessibility for Manitobans Act, which has, thankfully passed the customer service standard, which gave us, as a community and as a province, an opportunity to prepare for this. Each business and organization had to present accessibility plans, and in essence, that provided them an opportunity to practice for, this wave of people that need to come in that perhaps didn't need assistance before, but now do. Mm-hmm. There's, of course, the Accessible Canada Act, which is still in a formal sort of standard development phase. But I think as a whole, the community, I think, is coming together. We're starting to place more emphasis on universal access to services, more inclusive services to allow people, of course, that are in more vulnerable groups to be shopping and be doing the things that they need to do before the general public gets it. And then, of course, the services that they're offering at every location. I think that in general, people are really accepting and really willing to listen and learn from us when things like this happen and adjust their services accordingly. So has Vision Loss Rehabilitation Manitoba. We recognize that our services have an enormous impact on the quality of life that someone can live. And so when the whole thing started, we wanted to make sure that, of course, safety was the first priority. So making sure that any clients of Vision Loss Rehabilitation Manitoba that we are serving, as well as the staff providing that service, were going to be safe. So we quickly transitioned to a virtual remote-based learning platform, providing services across all of our departments virtually. And a large part of that was just reaching out to people mm-hmm. and checking in with them to make sure that they had the proper resources in place, to make sure that they had their, access to amenities and, the number for the grocery delivery service. So we were able to really sort of stop what we always knew as our normal and create this really robust virtual remote platform that was able to reach hundreds, if not into the thousands of Manitobans with sight loss.
What are some of the big complaints that you're hearing from clients that you deal with personally?
Not being able to get out, not necessarily knowing and having the trust level perhaps when they go out to respect that other people around them are going to be providing them that social distance. I think that's been a big concern amongst the blind and partially sighted community. Mm-hmm. I think we want the message to get out there that if you see somebody with a guide dog, if you see someone with a white cane, or just in general, if you see somebody, a lot of people don't use those two tools. Mm-hmm. But if you see somebody that perhaps isn't moving out of your way, well, maybe fan out around them because they're not able to see you. And we're not able to judge that social distance. I think that's probably been one of the biggest challenges. If not, there's also transit challenges. Blind and partially sighted people are very tactile mm-hmm. And need to be in touch with their environment in order to navigate and negotiate where they need to go.
Right.
And so, I think in Winnipeg here, they're needing to push buttons to get across streets. They're needing to pull cords and push buttons on buses and trail railings in buses to make sure, that they're finding their seats and, of course, touching seats so that they know no one's there. So I think those have all been concerns, not necessarily complaints, but concerns and, things that they're trying to grapple with and that we're trying to assist them with. So, we're doing our best to try to sort of come up with new strategies and educate people on different modes of getting around, mm-hmm. Whether that be, some paratransit services or, reaching out to friends or family or neighbors when it's safe to do so, mm-hmm. and that type of thing. But in general, I don't think there's been too many complaints. I think that, as we all try to tackle this pandemic and get through this together, I think that we're taking a lot of things in stride.
How long have you been doing O&M for, Colin?
So I've been providing orientation and mobility for, it's coming up to 8 years. And all here in Manitoba. I provide service across the province to pretty well anyone above the age of 18.
Right.
And it's been an absolute joy of mine to get to know the province and get to know a lot of different small rural towns and different communities within Winnipeg that I've never traveled to before, and get to know a lot of different individuals that have been living very unique lives and have very unique challenges, and helping them achieve their goals has been amazing.
Because yourself, you are visually impaired, correct?
Correct.
So what is the challenges that you have been facing throughout your life, and obviously as an O&M instructor, some of the challenges that you've done and the hurdles that you've come over?
I think the biggest hurdle I had to sort of overcome was just my confidence to tackle new things. I think as I've, grown older and experienced more, that certainly helped. But at the beginning, it was just getting over, asking for help. I think that was probably the biggest challenge I had in the past, and still probably presently do, is just knowing when I need to ask for help. But otherwise, I think I've been very, very fortunate to have supports in my life that have pushed me to, do my best, experience new things, tell me it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them.
Right.
And, try my best not to allow for my vision to hold me back. Right. But, and I credit that to my parents and my wife, of course, my family. Once we started having, my wife and I started having a family, that was in itself a challenge. I had all sorts of questions that I was asking myself, whether or not I'd be able to, see everything I needed to in order to safely parent.
Yep.
And, I think, well, obviously with the help of my wife, and then, with a lot of the experience we've been able to draw from our parents and from our siblings and friends, that has made things a lot easier. And I just have gotten much more comfortable with asking for help.
I tell you, when your kids get older, you won't miss seeing the dirty looks they'll give you. You'll just sense it. That's my biggest thing. I never get to see my kids give the rolly eye things, but I can always sense it when they're happening. And they always are surprised. They always are surprised of them that dad catches them doing something, especially when they were younger, and they're like, "How could you see that?" I just knew it. I just knew you were doing it. So those experiences are a lot of fun to go through as somebody who's been there with young kids and visually impaired. And I had the same questions that you do. I was very nervous about that as well, but in the end, it ends up working out.
Definitely. I think now, certainly my daughter being almost 7, she's been an amazing help and is always willing to lend her eyes to me to find something on the floor, or to find something I'm looking for, or, to find the nut I dropped in the grass. She can find it in, a flick of a switch. And I'm out there scrounging around on my hands and knees, and I get it for you. It's like, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much.
My kids always try to find my glasses for me and where I put my monocular down.
Yeah, exactly. There's those things that always go missing.
That's right. What could the sighted community do better for visually impaired and blind people?
I think take the time to offer assistance if you see someone struggling, but also understand that, not everyone is struggling. Every individual is just that. They may look like they're struggling, and if you offer assistance, that's really great. But if they don't need it, that's fine too. I think the other thing too is just, making sure that if you see somebody with a white cane, or perhaps a guide dog, or someone standing at a curb edge, maybe just slow down a little bit more. I think that would make people feel a lot more comfortable. But in general, I think just, ask questions, get to know your neighbors, get to know those people that are walking through the community. It feels good to know people are out there and willing to say hello and have a little friendly conversation. that way, you know, the more people that get to know everyone, the more help that's available to us when we need it. And not that we always need help, but, you know, there are going to be situations that we do, and it's good to know that we have our neighbors there looking out for us.
We talked earlier in the conversation about a couple of, the Blind Squared app. On your phone, what apps are you using?
Every day, I think I use Google Maps quite often, but I'm fortunate I can use it visually.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that app would function with voiceover at the moment, at least in Canada. I'm not sure. I just read an article suggesting that it is available with some more voiceover features in the United States.
Okay.
But I definitely use my Google Maps, and I also use my Winnipeg Transit app. That one tells me in real time when my bus is going to arrive, or within, you know, a few minutes.
Right.
But gives me an idea if I have to sort of pick up the pace, or if I could slow down, or if I could walk to the next stop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really helpful through the winter because you don't want to be standing out at the pole waiting for the bus if it's, you know, 8-9 minutes away. If you don't need to, you can stand in the shack if you're fortunate to have one.
Right.
And yeah, those are definitely the two. And then I would say that my built-in magnifier that most all iPhones come standard with, I use that daily, several times a day. The other one I was just going to mention is Seeing AI, which is a really incredible app.
That is an amazing app.
Yeah, as well as you know, specifically for right now, for those folks that are needing help getting through a store, finding a product, or figuring their way through a queuing line, or just understanding when it's their turn to move up in line, Aira could be a really good solution for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something people could keep in mind as well, to utilize Aira.
We chatted with the folks from Aira a couple of weeks ago. What an amazing, app that is, and a great program as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colin, is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we let you go today?
Just that, you know, if anyone in Manitoba here or across Canada is looking for anything related to orientation mobility, reach out to your orientation mobility specialist in your area, talk to them, figure out what virtual offerings are right for you. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's something. If you're having difficulty with something, I could promise you that anyone you speak to will go above and beyond and make sure that if there's a way around it or through it, we'll make sure we help you out.
Colin, thanks very much for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for listening to Blind Like Me. If you have a comment or suggestion about future casts, drop us an email to blindlikeme@outlook.com. Blind Like Me is a TimBlackOnAir.com production.